Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Ketubot, pages 67 through 73, Samach Zayin through Ayin Gimel. 67. Tana Rabbanan, Yatom Sheba Lisa. What happens if an orphan boy is ready to get married? What do we do for this kid? He doesn't have much assets of his own, and he's going to need help in establishing a life for himself as an adult. Sochen lo bayit, will rent a home for him. Matzin lo mita, will prepare a bed for him. Cholkei tashmisha, and all the various household utensils he's going to need. V'achach matzin lo isha, and then we find a wife for him to marry. So all this is done as a kindness, as a chesed for the yatom. Shenemar demach suah sherech sarlo, because the tzedakah requires that we give to the needy whatever it is that they're missing. And this boy is missing all of these things. Demach sarozeh abayit, what they're missing is the house. Asher sar is a bed and a table. Lo for him means a isha, a wife. As it says regarding Adam and Chava, I'll make a helpmate to correspond to him. So all these are kindnesses that are performed for the yatom and the yatomah who don't have anything for themselves. Samechet 68. Kol hamalim einav min tzedakah. What happens if someone is requesting for charity and you turn your eye away from that individual? You turn a blind eye towards the needy. It's like you worship idols. It uses the word blial in reference to not giving tzedakah. And it also says the word blial in reference to the corrupted, subverted city, the idolatrous city. So just as over there it refers to avodat kochavim, so to here avodat kochavim. Now, why does the Gemara use such hyperbolic language, extreme language, in chastising the person who turns their eye away from the needy and doesn't give tzedakah to say it's like idolatry? Answer is very simple. We Jews are monotheists. It will be a shanda, a disgrace, for one of us to succumb to idolatry. Would never do such a thing. Therefore, since Chazal don't want you to turn a blind eye to the needy and they want you to give charity, the best, most compelling way to do it is to say if you don't comply like this, it's like you worshipped idols. Nobody would want to have that stigma associated with themselves. Samech Tet 69. If a man, a father, gives over to his son-in-law cash to buy a field for his daughter, so now the husband is entrusted with this money to obtain a field for the wife that was given by the father-in-law. Well, what happens to this money? What do they do with this money? If the wife says, I want my husband to keep the cash, I don't want him to buy me a field, I want him to keep the cash. If they're fully married at the level of Nisuin, it's her prerogative to say the money is now his, the husband's. However, if they're only married at the level of betrothal, of Eresin, of Kiddushin, then it is the obligation of the son-in-law to do what he was told to do by his father-in-law, and he does not have the ability at that point to listen to the wife say so that he could keep the cash. Ayin, page 70. Let's say someone takes an oath, and it forbids person A from benefiting from person B. But it happens to be that they're actually friendly, and now there's a certain regret that a neder was put into place. And the person who's not allowed to benefit is desperate, has nothing to eat. And the person who can't confer benefit would like to help, but is prevented from doing so by the force of this previous neder. How can we get around to circumvent the force of that neder and allow for tzedakah, for charitable chesed to be done? Well, answer is pretty simple. The man with the cash goes to a vendor whom he typically does business with. So here, I'm going to give you, the vendor, this cash or this stuff, and you hold on to it, and then you'll give it over to the other fellow, and at a later time you can pay me back if need be. So a middleman is used to give life-saving benefit and circumventing the force of the neder. Then, Ayin Aleph, 71. Hamadir es ishto shalotelcha beis. Let's say a husband tells his wife, you can't go home to your daddy. Can't go home to your father. Now, that's not a good way to have a marriage. A woman has a right to go home to her parents every now and then. but the husband is being tough and says, you can't go home to your parents. Well, Bizman shehu be'ima be'ir, if the father is in the same city, then 1 month will allow this to stand. But by the second month, if the husband doesn't relent, we coerce the marriage to come to an end, and he has to pay her the ketubah for being too much of a hard case about this. Bisman shi be'ir acheres, and if the husband is if the father is in another city, then we allow one holiday. On one holiday, you don't go home to your parents; it's not the end of the world. But once you get to the second holiday, okay, then we have even more of a problem. Shlosha, if we get to the third holiday and you still can't let the wife go home, the marriage is over. V'yiten ketubah, the divorce will happen, and he'll pay her the ketubah, because it's impossible to continue in a marriage where she wants to go home to her parents every now and then and he won't let. Ayin bet 72. Elu yotzot shlo b'ketubah. The following women are divorced without the benefit of getting a ketubah payment. They forfeit the ketubah by their own actions. Who are such people? However, that Moshe Yehudis, if the woman violates the Torah of Moses or a conventional Jewish practice. Ezodas Moshe, what's considered the religion of Moses, and if you violate it, it's terrible and you don't get your ketubah payment. Machilo sheno musar, if she feeds him untithed produce. V'shemato nida, or she has relations with the husband while she's a nida, she doesn't go to the mikveh. Lokotz la challah, or she doesn't separate challah from the dough, from the bread she bakes. V'noderes v'nomakema, so she makes vows and she doesn't keep the vows. Ezudas Yehudis, and what is the conventional Jewish practice, which does not rise to the level of the religion of Moses and Torah law, but is still nonetheless important. Yotzav Rosh Perua, she goes out with her hair exposed in a public place. Tobashuk Medabarsim Koladam, where she spins the threads while schmoozing with the menfolk. Or curses her in-laws. So anyone who does these sorts of things, it's a terrible marriage. We put an end to it, and she doesn't get paid her ketubah. Ayin Gimel 73. Ketana Shalomiyana, if a minor girl was married in a rabbinical marriage, where her father was dead, and she was married off by her mother or older brother, and she's allowed to refuse that marriage at some point, miyun. Let's say she did not do miyun, and she became of age. She became a gedolah. But then she goes ahead and gets married to another man. Is that valid? So the answer is, Rav says, she doesn't require a get from the second husband, because it's not a marriage. She's really married to the first guy. Shmuel says she does require a get from the second man, because it is potentially a marriage. Rashi explains, those who say that she does not require a get, it's because the first husband knows that any act of intimacy he had with her before she turned into an adult was lo klum, didn't count. And that the kiddushin was affected again by an act of intimacy once she became an adult. And so since that happened, she can't just marry someone else. She would need a get to marry someone else. So since she didn't get a get from the first husband, she doesn't need one from the second husband because he's not a husband. Whereas the Shmuel approach that she requires to get from the second husband is because the intimacy that happens between her and the first husband was on the basis of the original kiddushin. And the original kiddushin was not really a kiddushin. So if she goes ahead and marries somebody else, that does have legal standing. Everyone have a great week.